Welcome back to Redivining Yourself. Now, today I have a question to ask you right from the get-go. We're going to jump right into this because this is a topic that is so near and dear to my heart, and it's actually a topic that is very on topic right now. If you haven't heard or seen or been, hearing all these references towards your nervous system and how your nervous system is everything, then I don't know what you're listening to, because this is the thing that everyone is talking about right now and should be talking about right now. Redivining Yourself is a podcast for those ready to reclaim their power, embrace transformation, and consciously create their next chapter. Through honest conversations, soulful insights, and practical wisdom, each episode explores what it means to choose yourself, release limiting beliefs, and navigate life's transitions with courage and grace. I call this episode Safety First. Now, that's a weird title, but I want you to understand the body's perspective and the nervous system's perspective. Those are key when we talk about safety. So, how do we create safety in our bodies, and how do we even know when and if we're feeling safe? As well as, why don't we feel safe? So, we're going to dive into all of that today. And next week's episode, I'm going to actually give you some practical applications, some movements that you can do to help you create safety in your body. Now, when we talk about safety, whether you're riding your bike right now or walking or driving, whatever it is that you're doing, the question I have for you right now is, do you feel safe in your body? Do you feel safe to be in your body? Because not everybody could say, yeah, I want to be in my body and I feel really safe and really good there. In fact, I'd be willing to bet that most of you do not feel safe there. And if you look around at your environment that you are in right now, whether you're driving, flying, walking, riding a bike, how safe do you feel doing what you're doing right now? All of those factors are being registered in your nervous system within a fraction of a second. And your nervous system, and even more importantly, fascia, is clocking, to use the words of the current vernacular. Your nervous system and your fascia are clocking every single thing that you are thinking, sensing, and feeling right now. This is why it's so important that we create safety first in the body, in your environment. Now, tension doesn't happen randomly in the body. This is something that we don't understand. And so when I talk about safety, it is directly related to tension. Because how many times have you noticed that your shoulders have crept up on you, or that your voice and your throat feel constricted? You feel a tightness in your jaw. We have so many warning signs, alarm bells going off from the body that are trying to tell us that we don't feel safe. And most of the time, we're not even aware that we're feeling unsafe, why we're feeling unsafe, and largely, tension becomes a habit in the body. It becomes a protection mechanism. And look, we're hardwired to be this way. In nature, if you look to the animal kingdom, it's extraordinary to me the way that they are so in the present moment, in their bodies, in the environment. And they do so because largely, unless you're the tiger, unless you're the lion, unless you're the predator, you are hardwired for safety. That little gazelle, that antelope, that giraffe, that, even some of the bigger animals. Every single creature on this planet is seeking safety. We are seeking a place where we can just allow our nervous system to stand down and to be in a regulated state. Now, when we look to the animal kingdom and we know that, they're using all of their senses in order to ascertain, am I safe or not? Us humans are really not that much different. We use our sight, we use our ears, we use even the sense of taste, smell, we use touch in order to ascertain, am I safe? And this is absolutely pivotal to understand, because everything that you do in your life, that you want to do in your life, everything that you desire to achieve, to attain, to acquire, is predicated upon the fact of how your nervous system feels. If you do not feel safe, now you can be a really high-functioning person, like me, and I'm not saying that as a compliment to myself, but I'm saying that I have adapted to having a nervous system that was highly unregulated for most of my life. And I could still function in the world, pretty high functioning. And yet I couldn't actually say for most of my life I felt safe in my body and in the world. And even to this day, I am aware of how that has impacted my ability to act upon those desires that I have, to achieve those goals that I have. Because you can want something all day long, but if your nervous system does not feel safe enough, if there is so much tension and anxiety in your body, you will not achieve, or you will achieve your goals, but it will cost you something. And I say that because as a person who has an autoimmune disorder, I think it's really important that when we talk about safety first, that we talk about several things. One is gender-based safety, that for many, many women, we have moved in the world for centuries without a safety net, without a sense of feeling safe. And there is hard data to back that up. And there's even physiological evidence to back this up, because 75 to 80% of women, of human women, have autoimmune disorders. And I think it's important that we ask why. Why is that? Well, if we don't feel safe, there is an entire cascade of physiological and biological things that happen in our beings, in our bodies, that actually can create a situation where your body, and I have had many discussions with doctors and other people about this, that autoimmune disorders are basically framed as your body is fighting against itself. I disagree. I think your body is screaming for attention, and it is trying to send a message to you, I do not feel safe, help me. That is my take on autoimmune disorders and why our bodies suddenly seem to feel like they turn on us. And I felt like that for a while. I didn't understand. But once you understand the cascade of things that happen when you don't feel safe in your body, you can then begin to track why you feel the way that you do and why you are having the experience in this personal journey that you are currently having. So safety is paramount. And you may have heard it framed recently as, we have to tone our nervous system for a hot minute. That's what people were saying, including myself. And it was over 20 years ago when I first began to discover and create a relationship with my nervous system and actually learning practical tools and rituals and skills and all of the ways that I could possibly learn in order to help regulate my nervous system. So I don't care. I don't want to get hung up on what words are you using in reference to your nervous system, whether it's toning, regulating, soothing, becoming aware of your nervous system. And I don't care what the terminology is. But if we are, as human beings, and especially if we are spiritual human beings, if we are truly going to move into a new era, a new way of being on this planet, this is a skill you're going to need to learn. You and every other person on this planet is going to need to learn to befriend their nervous system. We're going to need to discover and create the environment and the world where we can learn to be with each other and learn how to be with our nervous systems and to create safety in our environment so that our nervous systems can calm down, so that our nervous systems can regulate themselves. And they may still need help. I'll be very curious to see where this all goes in terms of this work. But I really feel like in my 20 years of experience of doing this very work, of helping people create and feel a true sense of safety in their being, that is the foundation of all of my work. Whether you come to me and you get on my table, or whether you come to me and we do some movements, whether you come to me and we're talking about how can you reach the goals that you want to reach, I'm going to be talking to you about what the state of your nervous system is. And it's a really valuable skill. And I know it can be scary. It can feel overwhelming, confusing. It doesn't matter, again, if you know what the terminology is or not. You know how you feel. You know what the inside of your body is trying to tell you. And all you have to do is listen. Tune in. Pay attention. It really is that simple. I don't want to go right into the practice in this session because I really want to really try and convey how important this is with words. So, if I were to ask you, where have you been holding tension in your body? I would love to inquire or have you get curious about, where have you been just surviving? Where, and are you aware of at all, where you have been trying to protect yourself? Have you been bracing? Right? Bracing is one of those things that, if here's a great example. If you are driving in your car and you know that an accident is about to happen, your body's going to prepare for that experience by bracing, either holding on to something, physically holding and creating enough tension in your body that you are going to safeguard yourself. That's a really good example of you trying to create a sense of safety in your being under a situation where you know you're about to be very unsafe, or at least mildly unsafe. And every single one of us has actually a protector, a protectress, a warden, if you will, some part of us that is standing guard, that is trying to make sure that we're protected. And it's a really important aspect. We all need that, but we don't need our guardians, our wardens, our protectors to be on high alert all the time. Because for most of us these days, we don't have lions and tigers and bears chasing us. And we don't, live under constant threat of danger, physically, mostly. However, we have so many life, environmental situations that are wreaking havoc on our nervous systems, and they have been for some time. Everything from environmental pollution, toxic environments, toxic people, high pressure, this mentality and this cultural fascination and obsession with working, with doing that we have. This constant need for distraction, for the disconnection from each other, from ourselves, from our bodies. This continued assault through our technology that we're experiencing. Our nervous systems were not wired for that. We were not made for all of those things to be true. We were basically, when humans came onto this planet, it was lions and tigers and bears that we probably feared the most, or having an accident, hurting ourselves, right? Back then, if you broke a bone, boy, you better hope that there was a bone healer in your village, in your community, that could help you heal. And even then, that was no guarantee. And we are not built for this constant barrage of information, of technology, of threats to our being. And many of those threats, whether perceived or real, are coming from a place of, it's by design. It's kind of meant to keep you off kilter. It's meant to keep you questioning your own body and to not trust what you feel and what your experience is. And if we can create safety in the body first, we can then begin to let tension go. We can begin to unravel some of those disconnected states of our being in order to actually reconnect them. And we also have this ability to, on a really deep and profound level, to not only reconnect to others and ourselves, but reconnect back into nature. Trees, plants, all of those things that exist in nature, including the creatures, the animals, down to the smallest of bugs, because they are hardwired for safety, they also have nervous systems. It's just that they don't have the sophisticated and sometimes harmful brains that we have, because our brain can run away with those things that we're the most afraid of. those limitations that we feel the most, those constraints upon our being. Animals don't have that. They're very fortunate in that. And I want to kind of flip the script on what it means to be human and how extraordinarily lucky we are that we have these minds and that we can use them to actually help our bodies feel safer. That we can actually create our inner landscape to be the most extraordinarily beautiful and peaceful and harmonious place to reside. I always think back to a yoga class that I attended many, many years ago in my initial trainings. And the teacher said, if you are not in your body right now, where do you live? It's not just miraculously that you live on this mat and in this yoga room and in this city. Yes, you do live there, but where does your thought derive from? Where does your heart live? Where does your knowing, your intuition, your gut, where does it reside? And this is what we've gotten so far away from that we not only understand that our bodies are the source of infinite wisdom and intelligence, we've gotten so far away from that that we no longer trust our bodies. We don't even trust our bodies enough to be able to create safety. It's really important. It's that important. And I can promise you that you can say, I'm ready to release my fears and release my blocks and release my constraints. Yes, and I am here to tell you, you will be at least mildly impaired, if not debilitated, by the state of your nervous system if it does not feel safe enough to actually help you release what you need to release so that you can actually bring into your body the things that you really desire and need. It's just a fact. And the way that we think of releasing these things, right? Like just releasing your fears, moving through it. It sounds great. And I can also tell you that that fear is coming from an authentic place in your body. It has the experience, the know-how, the knowledge, the intelligence to say, this is at least at one time in my life, it was a legitimate fear that came from a place where I had to be afraid, where my survival depended upon it, or I was perceived to believe that my being, my survival was dependent upon it. Now, we have really fancy words for these things of safety first and the way that we talk about the nervous system. And this is for, I think, another day to really start to dive into this more as a practice. I want it to be a practice for you because I think it's that important. But I do want to touch upon the way that we talk about our nervous system from the ground up. And many of you have heard this talked about before, right? We've talked about, and you haven't heard it talked about this way, but the parasympathetic nervous system, which is, right, rest and digest. That is you nice and calm, no tension, feeling pretty good, able to function pretty darn well. To being in the sympathetic state, right? Your body is feeling very sympathetic towards you and towards that danger that you are perceiving. And the words that have been given to these states of being in your sympathetic nervous system are fight, flight, freeze, or fawn. Now, fawn has kind of like, I would say maybe in the last, since COVID, right? I did some additional sort of training for trauma-informed care during COVID. It felt like a really good opportunity for me to dive in deeper into, what's behind all of what we're feeling. Because certainly during COVID, none of us were feeling particularly safe. It was weird. We didn't feel safe to go out into the world. We didn't feel safe enough to be with other people. That fear was so strong that it impaired our relationships with other people, the way that we related to the world at large. And our nervous systems took a massive hit during that time. And so it seemed only natural and right to me to start to go down that wormhole a little bit more. And even at that time, during COVID, when I did this trauma-informed care, fawning was not really discussed. So this is pretty recent. I'm going to say in the last 2 years. So we've come a long way just even since COVID of beginning to understanding our nervous systems more. And I think it's absolutely on time, so needed, and so brilliant that we are starting to wake up to this new reality of this human experience that we're having. So let's quickly just take a look at some examples of this sense of being in your sympathetic nervous state and what they might look like. And the first one is pretty self-explanatory, fight. When we feel threatened, right? And this is no different. Good example in the animal kingdom is we have that cute little gazelle, the baby fawn, antelope running around, right? And mom is trying to really protect it and she's trying to keep it safe. And the baby is learning about safety. And here comes the cheetah, right? Stalking it, hunting it. And mama hears this and she's totally tuned into it. Now, she's going to teach that baby to run, right? There's the flight. However, should that cheetah catch up to that little baby, it will instinctively fight, right? It's going to kick and get up and try and run, and it's going to contort itself so that it can evade this cheetah. So it's a really good demonstration of fight. Now, in the human body, that fight has a sneaky way of showing up in some interesting ways, let's call it. And you may identify with some of these. And I'm here to lovingly say to you, please do not judge yourself. That is my last desire. My greatest desire for you is that you do not judge this, that you do not judge this very human, natural, biological response in your body. That's the last thing I want you to do. If you are somebody, however, who, when you feel threatened in any way from a real or perceived threat, if you tend to be argumentative, if you're very contrary, if you find yourself wanting to argue just for argument's sake, that you want to be right rather than actually, trying to work something out. That fighting, your resistance, is another form of the way that fighting shows up. There's many ways, aggressiveness, just being sort of gruff with people, grumpy. All of those are examples of you being in a state of fight. And you may not even be aware that when you're grumpy or when you're feeling aggressive or any of those, argumentative parts of yourself, that you are actually not feeling safe enough in your body, and you're feeling like in some way you have to fight. You have to fight for yourself. And most likely, that lovingly stemmed from you having to prove yourself to somebody. It came from you having to stand up for yourself and maybe even fighting to be seen or heard in your life. And with that same loving kindness, I say, that's awesome that your body chose that methodology, that particular response and reaction to whatever that threat was, because it probably needed it at that time. The important thing to remember is that you may not need that now in your life. So, we'll talk more about that at another time. Let's talk about the flight. We talked a little bit about it in the animal kingdom, right? You're going to run from the cheetah, the bear, the lion, the tiger. Makes sense, right? But this can show up in, again, some kind of sneaky ways, right? The inability to make a decision. It can show up as you avoiding a decision, avoiding conflict. It can show up as you avoiding people, events, circumstances, situations, avoiding taking on a different role at work because you're so afraid, right? It's escapism. It's you distracting yourself with TV, with the internet, with all of those things. And it can also literally be just leaving when there's conflict. It can be you either leaving physically, right? Disassociating from your body. And so you're physically present, but part of you is elsewhere, which happens a lot during really traumatic events in our lives. And that is a blessing for many people. And it can literally just be you physically, just like you get into a fight, an argument with somebody, and you just walk out of the room. You can't deal with it. I'm done. You say, I'm done. That's flight. And I'm sure that there are many others that I'm not even thinking of right now. But those are just some examples, right? Just procrastination, that's another one. It's just you being so afraid or being so dysregulated that you literally cannot, right? I mean, that phrase, I literally cannot, is real. And in my world, we call that I'm at capacity. I cannot deal with whatever is happening in my life right now. That's a really important thing to know as well. Are you at capacity? And again, we'll put that to practical use at a later time. Now, freeze is one that can also show up as indecision. It can also show up as you avoiding certain parts of your life. And it can literally be you just being frozen, like paralyzed. You cannot move. You cannot react. Or you don't react the way you want to react because your nervous system just went into like, I'm just going to pretend I'm dead, right? Like that opossum that, when it gets attacked, it plays dead. We see it all through nature. They're the best examples of how we humans are also responding to life and to our environment and to the things around us. So that freeze response can show up as the ways that I just mentioned. The freeze can also be holding yourself back. It can be you just closing down, right? Again, that phrase, I'm done. That freeze can just be, I'm at capacity, my nervous system doesn't feel safe, I'm shutting down. It's a great safety mechanism, and we really need to be aware of when we go there. And I can think of many circumstances where this has actually played a part in my life. It certainly is one of my go-tos. I have, and chances are you are going to use every single one of these, or you have used them at some point in your life. That's great. Your body did what it needed to do. Thank you, body. However, again, unless we are in real danger, we need to be tracking when we're going into these states, these responses, because they may be from one incident that happened to you 20, 30, 40, 50 years ago that have no real actual bearing on your life right now, today. So if we can understand that, we can understand trauma a little bit more, and we can start to even reframe the way that we look at and the way that we define trauma, which is a whole nother topic. But I think it's time that we start taking a look at that as well. The last one is fawn, super sophisticated. Like, this one is wow. And this is, by the way, not my number one go-to. So I'm going to give you some examples of fawning that I have used. And if you see yourself in this, well, yes, I see you in this as well. So the ways that fawning has showed up for me is saying yes when I really wanted to say no, to actually maybe not even saying yes, but doing things that were not in alignment with who I was or who I am. It showed up for me as trying to stay safe in physical presence of men in particular, some women who I felt very unsafe with emotionally and physically, verbally even. And the way that fawning shows up is that we will say and we will do things that try and either distract that person, we try and play down or laugh off what's happening. Perfect example is one time when I was probably, I might have been 18, 19, but I was working at a company where largely men, think Mad Men series on TV, very similar to that mentality, right? Women were just secretaries and things to grab their butts and just denigrate and abuse. And this was actually my last day at this job, this particular job. And everybody was across the street at a bar getting drunk. The company was failing, which you could probably see why if everybody's off getting drunk all the time. But I'm there alone trying to hold down the office. And meanwhile, this super creepy gentleman that I worked with came into the office, and he called me into his specific office because I was playing receptionist that day. And I was propositioned with a $100 bill to go have sex with him. Yeah. And so in that moment, I actually chose fighting. And I think I told him to just fuck all the way off. And I basically got my stuff and I left. So I also took flight. I needed that in that moment. But there were other times where, ha ha ha, you're so funny, and then just try and like get out of that situation as quickly as possible. You're talking your way out of a situation that you don't want to be in. And that is, to me, like the ultimate fawning, sophisticated thing, because it is a fraction of a second communication between your body and your brain of what can I say, what can I do, what can I shapeshift myself into in order to be safe, to not be harmed here. And that happened multiple times, and you get really good at it. And the problem is, for us women, is that we are conditioned to be people pleasers and to say yes and just smile and play along. And that is a dangerous combination. A very dangerous combination. Now, I have seen some men fawn, and I will say that largely I have witnessed this mostly in myself and in the women in my life, the women that I work with, that every single one of us, I think I know one woman who says she's never had that experience of having to fawn to get out of a situation. That's remarkable and astounding, and I'm not sure I even believe it, to be fair. So, but I absolutely love her. Fawning is so very sophisticated that it is you doing whatever you have to do to stay safe. And all of those versions of yourself, I hope in this moment that if you say, oh my gosh, that's the one that I go to the most. I didn't even know I was fawning. The people pleasing, the saying things that you don't actually agree with, agreeing with somebody that you really don't, but you're like, in this situation, I'm just going to say I agree just so I can not have this person not like me or do something to retaliate against me. It's a powerful and very sophisticated, as I said, very sophisticated way for your body to work out how it's going to get through this situation in the safest way possible. And that's why when I bring this topic to you of safety first, it's everything. Because if you, as you are listening to this, are registering, which one do I go to? Fight, flight, freeze, or fawn? And why have I done that? And again, please do not judge yourself for this. I want you to understand how loving and kind and generous and benevolent this is of your body to grant you this power to be able to navigate life and all of those experiences that you have had or will have in the future. And the thing about this that's so important, for me, this podcast is really about the power of choice and about you being able to stay curious about why you choose the things that you do for yourself. And whether you choose to love that human experience, the gift of life that you have been given, as well as choosing to align yourself and connect yourself to the divine that is within you, the source of all source. It is in you. And to make peace with that, to be able to understand that the choices that you made in the past and that you now maybe still choose because you weren't aware that this is normal, that this is a response that is biologically hardwired into your body, and to know that you have a choice. You have a choice in how you get to respond moving forward. That's empowerment. That is you taking ownership of your life's story, of your past, of you owning your body and its incredibly, infinitely intelligent and wise and benevolent nature. That's what I hope that you can take away from this conversation about safety first. That you understand that if we don't feel safe in our bodies, in our personal journey, you will not ascend to those greatest heights at some point until you address this issue of safety. At some point, you will begin to understand why it's so important that you create safety first. And hopefully it's not until you wait until you get an autoimmune disease, until your body has a breakdown. That's really, to me, what autoimmune is it's had enough. It's had too much. And now it is saying, look, I can no longer support what's happening here, and I need help. I just hope that you can forgive your body for doing what it has known to do for you most of your life. And that this empowers you to now begin to understand just how divinely human you are. And there's nowhere to go but to grow from knowing all of this now. Now, next week, trust me, you want to make sure that you come back for next week's episode, because I'm going to show you some really intelligently designed ways that your body can actually release your fears, those constraints. And it's not going to happen in one practice, but I want you to have an experience in your body, maybe for the first time ever, of what safety can feel like. And I look forward to seeing you at the next episode, where we actually put some of these skills, where we put safety first in the body and in the mind and in the spirit. And I can't wait to show you. Until next time.